Hey, folks, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to start off by just thanking everybody in the audience tonight for joining us. Really looking forward to this conversation. Um, I wanted to just introduce myself quickly. I'm Kevin Miles. I'm the COO with Arthur Smith Advising. I've been with the firm now for about 3 years, and like I said, really excited to get a chance to hear two industry experts, talk about the importance of academic enrichment within the college admissions process. So, um, couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. I did want to let folks know that I'll be answering questions via the chat throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions as the presentation's going on, please direct those to the chat, and somebody will try to get to those as quickly as possible. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation for any questions that don't get answered. We'll also be recording this, so if anybody would like to have a recording of this afterwards, we'll have that available sometime in the next day or two. So I wanted to start off tonight just by thanking Dr. Gerard Dericks of World Scholars Academy. He's the founding director of World Scholars Academy. We've worked with you a couple different times in the past, Dr. Dericks. It's great to see you again.
Great to be here. Thanks very much, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to a great conversation tonight. What I also wanted to do is just take a minute to introduce our CEO, Arthur Smith. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint really quick here. Just one sec. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about developing academic interests to succeed in college admissions. Wanted to start off by just introducing our CEO, our founder, Dr. Artie Smith. Artie comes to the industry with probably one of the most unique and invaluable resumes that I've seen. He earned his BA from Cornell and has a master's degree and PhD from Duke University. Artie has 15 years of admissions experience at highly selective schools at Cornell University, where he was the assistant dean of College of Arts and Sciences and also served as an assistant director for undergraduate admissions. Artie also has 23 years of Division I coaching experience at Duke and Cornell, and he ended his career at Cornell as the head track and field and cross country coach. Also some pretty extensive experience within the Ivy League as well. Artie chaired admissions committees and evaluated over 20,000 applications. Artie, I think you and I have talked about this before, but that's on the low side. If you're being somewhat conservative and you say that, I think it's probably a lot more than that, but still very, very impressive. He served as a faculty advisor and an advising dean while at Cornell, but he also managed the Transatlantic Series, which is an exchange between Cornell University and Oxford and Cambridge universities in the United Kingdom. Along the way, Artie has mentored hundreds and hundreds of student athletes. This is our team here at Arthur Smith Advising. As I said, my name is Kevin Miles. I'm a college counselor. I'm also the COO. We have Carlin Gray, a Cornell University graduate, who's also a senior college counselor. Brandon Crystal, one of our great team members, a senior college counselor. And a new addition to our team as of the past few months is Lee Smith, who oversees a lot of tutoring and test prep services. Just a great addition to the team. We're really excited to have her. So a little bit about what we do at Arthur Smith Advising. We offer one-on-one virtual counseling sessions and admissions coaching. We work with students at any stage of the high school process, whether that's the ninth grade, the very first day of ninth grade, whether it's sometime in senior year when they know that they've got to get things going with their college search. We're here to help. For anybody interested, we offer a 30-minute complimentary consult to talk with families and students about their needs. To talk with them about our services as well and sort of where those things can intersect. We've had really consistent results over the past 4 years. One stat that we're all very proud of is about 90% of our students get admitted to at least one of their top 3 choices. And when we say get admitted to one of their top 3 choices, that's obviously highly selective schools, as you'll see in a minute. But we're very proud to say that we've had students admitted to over 300 unique colleges and universities, both in the United States and across the globe. Just a little bit about our results. So this past season, this past cycle, we had students already up to this point, and the results are still coming in. We've had students admitted to 250 different colleges and universities, like I said, across the United States and across the globe. In that class of 2025, we've had students get admitted to every single school in the US News Top 25 rankings, to include multiple students at places like Cornell, where we had 14 students admitted, UPenn, Northwestern, Tufts, Dartmouth, WashU, places like Stanford, Princeton, Brown, MIT, University of Chicago. The list goes on and on. We've been very, very lucky to have some great results, to work with some great students. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our CEO, our founder, Dr. Arthur Smith.
Kevin, thanks for the intro and getting this organized. Dr. Dericks, it's really great to see you again. I've enjoyed our conversations in the past, and the world we live in with working with young people and college admissions, it seems to change not just every year, but sometimes every few months. But I do think there's some core aspects of how young people can really take advantage of their high school years that haven't changed. And one of those is seeking out opportunities to enrich their mind and try out new interests. And that's one of the reasons I love your organization. So looking forward to hearing from you a little bit later about the great opportunities you provide. What I will do to kind of set the table for you and then us to have a further conversation later is I'd like to kind of walk through for folks how this college application admissions process really operates these days, and put in context how why academic enrichment, if you will, is so important. And just want to reiterate one thing that Kevin said. My colleagues, both Kevin and Brandon Crystal, are on the call. And so if people do have questions while I'm talking, please fire away in the question and answer. My colleagues will be able to answer some of those questions, and I think they'll probably save some of them for us to discuss later. So I'm going to very quickly kind of share my screen, do what Kevin was doing earlier, and get this up and running. Hopefully, let's get caught up to where Kevin left us. Hopefully you're all seeing my today's agenda page. Hopefully that's the screen, the one that's actually on the screen. Thank you for nodding. My technologically challenged perspective with some of the Zoom stuff, that's helpful. So again, I want to set the table for how academic enrichment kind of fits into a very important niche, if you will, in building a great college application. And a good way to start is I'm going to talk a little bit about what's changed in recent years, discuss how these applications are actually read, talk about, if you're going to put together an application, you don't want to have one that they forget about the next day. What are the things that you can be doing to stand out and be memorable in this process? Provide some tips for areas for folks to focus on prior to that 12th grade year when they apply to college. And then my final thoughts and takeaways, I hope Dr. Dericks will lead right into thoughts that you have and want to share with folks, and then we can kind of wrap up with some conversation and some questions at the end. And like I said, I hope folks will not be shy about asking questions as I go. I think I mentioned a minute or so ago, this is a landscape that seems to change every time you pick up the news. And I think it's a process that a lot of families enter, talking about the college search and application process, that often enter with a little bit of stress and trepidation, and understandably so. Even if you're the child of a high school aged student, and if you applied to college, that was a different era. And if you're coming to the U.S. from a different country, it's a very different process from how other countries do it. And indeed, in the last few years, there have been some changes. One of those fundamental changes, it's probably the biggest change that I have seen in my 25 plus years in higher ed, is what we're going to call we're in a test optional era of college admissions. So standardized testing at most universities is no longer required. What do I mean by standardized testing? Submitting an SAT or an ACT result. The origins of this date back to the beginnings of the pandemic, when students weren't always able or not able at all to take standardized tests. And so to keep the applications rolling, colleges had to relax that. And it was a little bit of an experiment for them in determining what this means for how they select a class. One of the things that we've emphasized to students throughout those years, however, is that just because they're not requiring it doesn't mean you shouldn't submit it or shouldn't try. Test optional, a better way to think about it is it's remained an opportunity for students to find a way to distinguish themselves from those around them. The thing that's great, however, is that if someone is not a wonderful standardized test taker, it's no longer anywhere close to being the single determining or most determining factor in a college application review. But it never went away in terms of being unimportant. And indeed, in the last year or so, many of the most selective schools, after several years of test optional policies, now that everyone can safely take tests again, are going back to requiring standardized tests. Indeed, this coming year, in the Ivy League, in this coming cycle of rising seniors, Brown, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Penn, Yale, 6 of the 8 Ivy League schools will be requiring standardized tests. Columbia is pretty committed to not requiring it for the foreseeable future. Princeton, the rumor is, not for sure, but they may be returning to requiring this in a couple of years. So if you're dealing with a younger student, the pendulum has swung back at the most selective institutions that standardized testing is going to be required. But I do want to note that the most selective institutions in the US are a small sliver of the total number of colleges and universities in this country. And they are a small sliver of the top schools. And many of these, in fact, most of these universities around the country are going to continue with a test optional standardized testing approach. So I think the trend that we're seeing is largely towards the most selective schools with a few exceptions, and test optional is going to exist in some format for the next few years. As I mentioned, however, it is a missed opportunity if students don't at least try to get a good test score, because in a test optional admissions environment, it's still an opportunity to share that information with them. The other kind of seismic change in college admissions just in the last couple years, which I would say rivals the impact of the test optional change, is the decision in 2023 by the Supreme Court of the United States to essentially forbid and outlaw the use and consideration of race and ethnicity in college admissions decisions. So the Common Application, which is the primary platform that these colleges use to get their applications and for students to submit, you still are able to indicate your race and ethnicity, but it is now not possible, and it's illegal for colleges to download that information when you apply. Really and truly, they are not considering the checkbox of your race and ethnicity. This is a fundamental change to how universities considered building a class. Many of them, if not all of them, have a commitment to providing access and opportunity to a diverse group of students. But the Supreme Court left open the possibility, and I would even say the opportunity, for students to still talk about their own background and their own identity and how that has shaped them. It's simply not checking a box anymore. So with that opening, most universities have added to their what's called their supplement essay section of the Common App. That's where each university provides a unique set of questions for their institution. They have added an essay question in many, many, many cases that essentially invite students to talk about their upbringing, their identity, the culture and the community that have shaped them. And if students feel it's appropriate, it's certainly fine to talk about how their particular race or ethnicity or upbringing may have shaped them. And I look at this as another opportunity for all students to be able to share really unique and interesting things about their upbringing and how that has shaped them into the person that they are. So there's no more checking of a box, but there are opportunities for students, regardless of their background now, in a way that they didn't have before, to talk about how their identity and their upbringing have shaped them. So pretty fundamental change, really interesting. We're now kind of in our second cycle of this change in policy and practice. And it's interesting to see that colleges still seek out diverse classes, but now it requires a different kind of effort from the student to articulate that. Those essays that I'm talking about, the supplement essays, are one set of essays that are important in an application review. There's also what's called the Common Application Personal Statement. Whether it's that essay or the supplement essays, these are very important elements in an application. And how they are viewed is important to understand. And this is something that I've noticed changes on as well in recent years. The ease with which savvy students can use tools like ChatGPT or other AI tools to write essays has, shall we say, I'll use artificially inflated their writing abilities. But then again, in some cases, it hasn't inflated their abilities. It's perhaps made it more clear that they're not the ones actually writing the essay. What I'm getting at is that whether it's an AI tool or a well-meaning parent or well-intentioned English teacher or or a counselor who's trying to help the student, it's easy for a student's voice to get lost with all of the help they can get with the use of ChatGPT. And it's really, really important that students and families, particularly that parents, really encourage their students to find their voice. It's not really that hard for a college admissions person to tell if an essay has been, overly enhanced by AI. And that's a quick way to get a student denied, because these colleges are adamant that this be your work. We often will encourage students to perhaps use a ChatGPT tool to help get their thoughts organized. But one of the arts, if you will, not the science, but the art of good essay work is working with that student to make sure they craft an essay that's in their voice. And I've just seen a lot of additional bad paths that students can go down the last few years because of these tools. And like any tool, it's about using it ethically and in a way that helps the student do the best possible work that's actually their work. As a result of another change that we should be aware of, as a result of these test optional policies, the ease with which you can apply via the Common App these days, there's been an incredible increase in the number of applications to these schools. It's easier to apply, and students are more encouraged than ever to do that. These are all good things, but there has not been a corresponding increase at most institutions anyway in the number of admission staff, which has meant a decreased amount of time actually spent on a particular application. This is kind of a really sad thing to share because students spend months and months building an application. But oftentimes at the most selective universities that get so many applications, maybe only 10 to 12 minutes is being spent on that application. And so in a couple slides, I'll talk about the things that we want to do, and in conjunction with Dr. Dericks, talking about programs like World Scholars Academy and other academic enrichment programs, how you can build something that if they're only looking at it for 12 minutes, they're going to remember you the next day. So if they're only spending 10 to 12 minutes reading an application, how do they really go through that? Well, the first thing, as I've already mentioned, is that students use it. The vast majority of schools in this country, there's a few exceptions, but the vast majority of schools, they use the Common Application platform. A lot easier than in my day when you had to bang out your application to 6 different schools on a typewriter or hope that your handwriting was good enough on 6 different applications. Now you fill out the Common Application once, and you can submit that and you select whatever schools you want to send that to, and boom, off you go. Now in that Common App, each of these schools has a supplement, but again, that's the platform by which, for most schools, applications are submitted. And so the admissions office at these institutions downloads the applications from the Common Application. They get the supplement that they asked for as well. And they're collecting thousands, and I should probably update this slide, tens of thousands of applications, because these schools really do see large numbers these days. And once they've received them, it's important to understand that the initial sorting of applications, and this often surprises people, is by geography. They are looking at where did you go to high school. Dr. Dericks and I were just talking, he's in sunny Hawaii. I'm in actually sunny Chicago today. But if there was a student local to him and a student local to me, they're not going to be competing against each other. These colleges organize their admissions pools by geographical region of the high school. At that point, then sure, it's separated into academic interest and particular division of the university, which I'll get into in another slide. But as hard as this is to say and conceptualize, the initial group of competitors that a student has in this process are the students at their own high school and in the larger region that they live in. Once those applications are sorted by geographical region, then there's readers typically on a committee. I used to chair committees at Cornell. I had a few people that helped me with initial reads. And it is indeed possible on the first read that somebody can be refused. And I'll get into that right off the bat. That does happen in the first read. No one's admitted on the first read. It becomes a maybe or a yes, and then it moves up the chain, and the next set of people read the application, or someone like me might be reading it a second time. We meet, we debate, we make our decisions on who we're admitting. And I should note that this process is the same whether a student applies through what's called the early round or the regular round. Every institution that I'm aware of has a regular decision round that typically means the applications are due in January. Students going to apply to as many of those institutions as they want, and they have until May 1st, roughly, to decide after they get their results around April 1st. So you apply January 1st, find out in the spring, make your decision in the spring. But most institutions also have an early round, which is typically due, some exceptions, but typically due in early November. Two types of early applications. There's an early action round. You can apply to as many schools as you want through the early action round, and you have until May to decide. You usually get your results by the end of January at the latest. And then some schools have an early decision option. Not every school does this, but many of the selective institutions do. And this is a commitment on the part of the student. You can only apply to one school through the early decision round. And if accepted on December 15th, usually that's the date, you're done with the process. And this can be very appealing if a student has a top choice. It also is very appealing from a strategic perspective, because that absolutely, when you're committing to a school, enhances one's chances of admission. We'll often have students apply early decision and then to several other schools, early action. You're allowed to do that. I'm bringing this up because whether it's the early round or the regular round, this process that I just described of submitting via the Common App, geographical sort of applications, the committee reviews their work. This happens in the same way, whether it's in the early round or the regular round. So when they're reading these applications, and maybe they only have 12 minutes to look at it, what are they doing, and how, therefore, can a student work backwards from what they're doing to make sure they stand out? When I was chairing committees, I would often read 50, sometimes 60 applications a day. If I had back then, it was a amazing 10% admit rate. I think they're down to about 6% now. But, so I was maybe admitting 5 students a day. But honestly, I might only remember 1 or 2 of those applications the next day. And the idea is to stand out and be memorable, so that hopefully they remember you, they want to admit you. It's a holistic process. There are several pieces of this puzzle that matter. In fact, there's not one element that alone will guarantee someone's admission. That's what holistic reading in college applications means. The most important part is the academic transcript, which includes the rigor of the curriculum and the grades achieved. When we're evaluating transcripts, sure, we care about the grades being very strong, but what's often misunderstood is not a pure GPA. Because some schools don't differentiate between honors and AP, but we do. And we're looking to see who has chosen to take the most demanding curriculum at their school. The guidance counselor, when they do their part of the application on behalf of the student, will indicate to us, is this the most demanding curriculum at the school? Is it very demanding, merely demanding, or less than demanding? We're looking for very demanding or most demanding, at least at the top institutions. And every single time, a B in an AP or an IB class is better than an A in the regular one. It's just important that students challenge themselves and take risks. And I'll get back to that in a little bit when we talk about academic enrichment. It's important to take risks and try new things. And students are going to be rewarded for that in this process. Now, standardized tests remain important, even throughout the test optional era. If it was optional, that meant you had the opportunity to submit it. And I would note that, over the last couple years, just looking at the schools in the top 25, for example, of the U.S. News and World Report rankings, the most selective institutions, it was kind of neat. 50% of the students who were applying submitted test scores, 50% did not. Well, last 2 years, 80% of the students who were admitted, this is under schools that were test optional, 80% of those that were admitted submitted test scores, 20% did not. Now, I'm the kind of person who looks at the world as a glass half full mentality, not glass half empty. And I will tell you that if you had told me 6 or 7 years ago that 20% of the people we were admitting had no test scores, I would have thought that was amazing. Wow. So the fact that 20% of students at some top schools are getting admitted without test scores is great. But I think you can see where I'm going with this. Clearly, with those statistics that I just shared, if you're submitting test scores, a higher percentage of those students were being admitted. Now, how do you know whether to submit a test score? How do you know whether your test score is one that keeps you competitive at a school that is requiring them? Well, a typical rule of thumb that I encourage families to look at, because it's going to vary from school to school, is that you want to look at the historical data. What's the 25th to 75th percentile of test scores, SAT or ACTs, that have been admitted? What's that range that's been admitted to that school in the last few years? If you're in that range, you know, your score is competitive. You are what's called admissible. If you're in the top quartile, I would say it's helping you. Not enough to guarantee admission, but it's really helping you. And if you're in the bottom quartile, if it's a test optional school, we're not going to submit it. And if it's a school that requires it, I think we need to ask ourselves really hard questions about, is this school still realistic? Just to be candid. So those tests can matter. Students should take advantage of the opportunity to take it multiple times. They should not despair if they're not great at it, because it is not the only piece, but it's important. What really is going to help a student stand out once they have the grades and the test scores are in that admissible range for a school? These top institutions, or any institution, has plenty of candidates who meet their needs grade-wise and testing-wise. Where you're going to stand out, honestly, is developing a resume that presents unique academic interests, developing essays in the application that speak to unique academic interests, and giving the evidence that shows that you've developed them, perhaps in the summer, perhaps in the evening outside of school, in hands-on ways with top mentors. That's why, you know, and Dr. Dericks, we'll get a chance to have a conversation with him in a little bit. You know, the academic enrichment programs that World Scholars Academy provides is a great way for students to not just start this process, but build on this process. And what do I mean by unique interests? You know, I mentioned that the first sort in an application is the geographical region of the high school, or origin of the high school. But they do care what the student is indicating they might want to major in college. The analogy, those that have heard me talk before have heard me say this over and over again, the analogy that I always provide is, if you're going to the grocery store and it's Sunday and you want to get home, the last thing you want to do is stay at the grocery store, and there's a checkout line with 15 people in it, another checkout line with 12 people in it, but then they just opened up another aisle, maybe checkout line a little bit further down the aisle, only 2 people are in it. I know I'm going to walk a little bit further down the aisle to get to the shorter checkout line. You get through quicker, but I would also tell you that cashier, not that this matters in this case, but that cashier is more likely to remember you. They're only dealing with a couple people in the line. And remember, we want to build applications that are memorable. So the analogy here in an application is, it's important to be careful about getting in a line, an application line, with a very popular intended major. If we can help students develop unique interests, and again, some of the programs offered through World Scholars Academy really allow students to branch out into things that aren't so obviously available in high school, to find things that they're passionate about that maybe are a little bit more off the beaten path, a little bit more unique, they're going to be more memorable, which is more likely to lead to success in this process. Now, I want to be careful in saying this. You can't just look at a school and say, oh, they don't have very many English majors. My son or daughter is a STEM person. Let's do the English route. You need to have something on your resume to back this up. And this is why at a younger age, we really like to encourage students to take part in programs like World Scholars Academy, to test out and enrich themselves in new academic areas, to start building a resume that's credible and believable and authentic when a student talks about an area of academic interest that maybe is a little bit more unique. The last thing I ever want to do in working with young people is turn them away from their passions. But if it's a young man who wants computer science, if it's a young man or woman who wants to be pre-med, this is a great set of ambitions, but can we help them develop some other interests that will make them more memorable at the time of application? And once we've identified those things, and again, World Scholars Academy is a great way to start doing this, we then want to build on this through extracurricular activities at school, perhaps eventually a research project, leadership in the activities that they do at school, Again, World Scholars Academy is a great way to initiate and further develop, further stack up their interests. One way to think about this is that when someone, starts high school, we don't expect them yet to know exactly what they want to do. They're going to have what I like to call is a horizontal resume. There's probably a lot of things that young people have dabbled in, have started to get interested in. They're going to have a lot of different interests. What we're trying to do during high school is to build this up more vertically, maybe think of it as a funnel, where over the course of their career, they're starting to narrow their interests a little bit, not becoming one-dimensional, but finding one or two areas that they can build a more vertical application, and vertical always stands out over horizontal. So, developing that resume, and I should also add, separate from academic interest, we like to see students finding a way to be a leader in their community. Leadership can be a title, but it also can be a state of mind in terms of making the clubs, the activities, the volunteer work, the enrichment programs that they in, to be a driver of good work in that organization. Essays are a great way to display these sorts of things. I've already talked a little bit about this, so I'll be very brief, but the common application essay is the personal statement, the longer essay, and then each school publishes supplement essays where students can talk usually about whether it's their identity or the community that has shaped them, and then also academic goals. And this is where students can connect the dots between what's on their transcript, what their academic goals are. They can connect the dots with explaining how some of their academic interests, some of their academic risk-taking through programs like World Scholars Academy, they can use these experiences in these supplement essays to really make a good case. Quick note, though, about the Common App essay. This is not an academic essay. That's what we save that sort of stuff for the supplements in most cases. This is an essay about the kind of person that this college wants to admit to their campus community. They have more than enough great students with great test scores, and they have plenty of students with great activities, but they also really want to like you. And we've got the acronym RICE here. I'm a former running coach. It also applies when you get injured: rest, ice, compression, elevation. But we're using it, sorry, I digress. We're using it in a college admissions perspective. The themes that you want to try to develop in a very effective common application essay are traits that admissions people like in young people, that they want to bring to their campus community: resilience, initiative, curiosity, empathy. I think we can all agree, if we were hiring somebody, if we were meeting someone for the first time, if we meet people that display these attributes, they tend to be very likable. And these are the things that admissions folks look for. You don't have to touch on all of these essays. You don't have to have some story that's so memorable it would make the cover of Time magazine. We're looking for personal anecdotes that display these characteristics that a student has developed over the course of high school. And I would argue that that can be tied back to their choice of academic enrichment, that these are opportunities to develop initiative and curiosity. And sometimes in trying out a new subject, even through a great program like World Scholars Academy, there's a little bit of resilience has to get developed because you're learning something new that's a little bit different. Two other quick things that are part of the applications. I want to make sure we have enough time to get to talk to Dr. Dericks. Letters of recommendation, very, very important. Everything I've described so far are the pieces that the student presents, but as admissions people, we care very deeply about what the adults in their life say. So the adults can speak to RICE, to resilience, initiative, curiosity, empathy, but they really can speak to the kind of person a student is in the classroom and their intellectual potential. Finally, many schools still offer interviews. In the majority, and I'm going to even go so far as to say the vast majority of cases, these are no longer evaluative. They're not going to do harm to a student if they attend, but you can do harm to yourself by declining them. This is a red flag to an admissions office that maybe you're not that interested or maybe you're not that confident. This is something that at Arthur Smith Advising we work with students on to prepare them for these interviews. Students should feel relatively little pressure here. It's very, very rare that the interview is what pushed the student in, and it's really hard to mess it up and not get in unless you decline it. But it's still a good experience for young people to go through. And again, declining it is the one way I can think of where someone could do themselves harm in the process. Some quick suggestions before I hand off to my friend, Dr. Dericks. I found that students do well when, at an early age, they start building a file. It's great to keep track of things, makes life easier when they're older, but I find it to be a motivating thing. As young people see that they accomplish different things, they want to do more. Make sure they're picking demanding courses. Test prep is important. It's not the only thing anymore, but it would be a mistake, I think, and a missed opportunity not to look into it. We usually recommend at some point in the spring of 10th grade, the summer going into 11th grade, to think about that. So important for young people to take risks and try on new activities early in high school. Take advantage of programs like World Scholars Academy to try on different interests for size. So important. You're not going to be penalized. If this is one message I could give to the parents of younger students, encourage our kids to try lots of different things. This is going to how they're going to become better, more interesting, more well-rounded adults. But it's also something that college admissions people are looking for, that risk-taking, the curiosity to seek out new things. And then our job is to help them, build that towards something that is at the center of their application as they get older. Don't be afraid to take the initiative to be a leader. Again, World Scholar Academy is a great example of how a student can take the initiative and be independent of other students at their high school. We're trying to stand out here. That can matter. We work with students at a young age on the kind of essay writing techniques that are valuable. I think it's important for younger kids to become good writers, not just because of college admissions, but just in general. We need good communicators. You don't want to rely on ChatGPT, but really you need to preserve a student's voice. It's a skill, just like any skill. You need to practice it. And then, you want to make sure students build balanced lists. I'm a former coach. I want to help every young person I work with aspire for their goals. I've never laughed at somebody and says, you can't do that. But I'm also a former Ivy League admissions dean, and I know how hard this is. And it is so important that in addition to the aspirational schools that we're going for, that students are very careful in working with someone like one of my counselors or me in building a list that's very balanced. Schools that they feel excited about, but not every single one should be super selective. We need to have schools that are more in a targeted range, and then some backup schools even from there. Dr. Dericks, I want to hand it back to you. I think this last slide, kind of reiterates some of the things that I've talked about. The last thing I'll say before I hand it to you, though, is if anybody wants to learn more from me that we don't get into tonight, we have a QR code here, takes you to our website. As Kevin mentioned at the very beginning, we're always happy to do a complimentary consult for any family that wants to talk more about how we might be able to help them, talk about our services a little bit more. We're happy to do that. But I'd love to hear more from you. It's so much of this process is students developing their curiosity, taking risks, trying new things to enrich their academic and intellectual experience in high school. And I know that's that is exactly what you do. So I'm going to stop talking and hand off to you. Thanks for being patient.
Well, thank you very much, Artie. That was a very informative presentation. And yes, just as Artie said, World Scholars Academy, we've been set up, we're designed to help young people, first of all, discover what those interests that they have are. All too often in middle and high school, students really don't have much of an opportunity to experience what it's like actually to work or study in many fields that they might like to go into in the future. And also give them an opportunity to deepen these interests, right? They think, oh, I might like to study engineering. Well, give these students a chance to actually get exposed to some real engineering content and get an idea about where they might want to specialize in the future. And also, of course, to credibly demonstrate these interests by participating in these courses and doing well in them. You're providing evidence that you can use in college applications that this is something that you're interested in and really want to pursue. And that's something that, as Arthur was saying, colleges really want to see. And also our courses, it's a low pressure environment, right? If it happens that you don't like it, you don't like this subject as it turns out, or you don't feel that you're particularly interested or good at it right away, that's fine, right? There's no pressure to actually succeed. Whereas if you take a course in high school, that might not be the case always. It might go on your transcript there. So I have a brief presentation I'll set up right now that I'll share with you to kind of provide some information on the courses that we offer. So get that set up. Can we see the screen? Yeah, great. So as Arthur mentioned, I'm the founding director of World Scholars Academy, and what makes us unique is the top level instructors that we recruit to teach our programs. They're all sourced from elite universities. We handpick them for their ability to communicate and convey deep knowledge. So not just superficial knowledge, or you memorize X, Y, and Z. We all know that's of no use actually in the real world. You'll forget it by the end of the summer for sure. That's of no use. But actually, how to become yourself, this engine of understanding and systematizing the world that will make you a force, whether that's in college or also in your professional career. And for this, we provide, I think, the highest levels of personalized academic guidance that I've seen in the industry. So our courses uniquely offer one-on-one tutorials with your instructor, and also a minimum class size of 6 students, which is far below anything else that other programs offer. So there's really a chance to interact and receive personal attention that you get in our programs that I don't think, if you look around, other programs do offer. And also all of our programs, they're focused on leading disciplines that have a career orientation. So it's looking kind of a bit beyond high school. In high school, of course, you have to study a lot of things you're maybe not super interested in. Well, we want to make sure that these are programs that you can see yourself succeeding in as a career potentially in the future, that are going to be relevant to helping you succeed. So let me talk a little bit more about that. So our programs, I actually haven't updated the year, but that's all right. I have updated the slides. But so we offer 2 different types of programs: summer courses and research internships. And these are separated, and I'll describe these both in detail. So our summer courses, these are a number of subjects. So business, medicine, law, engineering, computer science, among others. And they're consist of 2 weeks long. These, I haven't mentioned, but all of our programs are live online. And these take place over 2 weeks, over weekdays. And both before the course starts, you'll have a one-on-one tutorial with your instructor, so they can basically get to know who you are, what makes you tick. If there's things you're particularly interested in, they can incorporate that into the lectures that are coming up. And also just to get to know you better, so that they can write a better letter of recommendation for you at the end. So they're actually going to know who you are. You're not just a copy and paste exercise. And that'll shine through in your letter of recommendation. So you'll have a one-on-one tutorial before the course starts to get to know you, what you're interested in. You'll have the course, and then after the course ends, you'll have another one-on-one tutorial where you can ask any questions that may have come up in the interim. And your instructor can also give you some personalized guidance about what they think might be keys for you to succeed going forward if you wanted to continue in that discipline. As I said, maximum class size 6 students. Typically, our programs are smaller than this, so it's even more personalized than that. We also receive access to video recordings of each class, which you can use for future review. It can be the case that a year or 2 later, you're in college and like, oh, I really love the way my professor presented that topic on, say, present value. Well, you can go back and look at what your instructor here said, and use that as your benchmark for applying that to your course. We also provide a graduation certificate and a letter of recommendation from your instructor. signed off by your instructor. They're from an elite institution, so it'll be Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, sometimes a prominent professional organization, but they will have had some elite credential like Oxford, Cambridge, or some Ivy League school on their CV. And we're happy to submit these to the Common App for you. We do that very regularly every year. So that's our summer courses. And we also offer, the past several years now, research internships. And so what this is a chance for students, maybe they are already pretty sure they really are interested in law, for instance, and they want to actually do some novel legal research in that field. And so we provide topics that we come up with in collaboration with our mentors, and students can sign up for these various internships. On the internship, students will basically learn what it takes to write an academic paper. So they'll learn, of course, academic writing style, how to survey the literature, to write things like a literature review, how to think critically and synthesize information, how to structure an academic paper. And this course takes place over a month, so 4 weeks and 3 hours for each class. And just like in the summer courses, there's homework every week. For the summer courses, it's every day of homework. For this, there's a week in between where you'll be doing assigned work in relation to authoring at the end this research paper that you'll submit for publication. And of course, you can use this on your university applications in order to demonstrate, look, I've actually been a part of, I'm a co-author in this paper on this topic. I actually have now state-of-the-art knowledge in this field, as demonstrated by what we've assembled here and synthesized in this research report. And it shows that you're kind of ahead of the game already in knowing what both you want to do and what it takes to succeed in academia, because really academic research is considered the pinnacle of academic achievement, and you're already got a high-level introduction to that and some demonstrable outputs in that field. So that's very valuable. We also provide a certificate of completion for that. So as a summary, here are the various courses that we offer. We offer both high school level courses and middle school level courses for those who want to get started early in these 5 fields. Career exploration is available to everyone from 12, a career exploration course from everyone from 12 to 18. And this covers these five main disciplines. And for the high school cohort only, we offer a proof-based mathematics course for those who want to get a high-level introduction to some proof-based mathematics that they'll be using in later studies. Also, international relations and creative writing. We have fabulous mentors for those programs. And for internships, we offer them in 4 different disciplines here: business, medicine, law, and engineering. And who are the target students? Who's going to be best poised to benefit from our programs? Well, you're going to be motivated. You're going to be intellectually curious. You may be a top student already, or you're a student who's may not be a top student yet, but keen to do better and want to push themselves, challenge themselves, and continually improve. You're the right student for these programs. Also help you build academic and social confidence. We have lots of group work exercises. You'll have presentations that you'll be doing. In the final class of each of our summer courses, for instance, there's a challenge class where you'll be competing with other students. So for instance, in the business class, you'll have a Shark Tank-esque pitch for a unique product that you're going to be marketing. For the law class, you'll have a moot, or basically a debate, as if it's a court type setting on a controversial topic, and so on for other courses. So it's a chance to flex your muscles and demonstrate what you got, and just build that muscle, as it were. And these are all great for university application strengthening as Arthur so kindly mentioned. So you can reach us, worldscholarsacademy.com. Happy to answer any questions there. And also right now, in case you want to type in some questions there on the chat. So I'll just stop sharing and look forward to helping with any questions that anyone has.
Dr. Dericks, thank you for that. I actually had a follow-up. You know, these are the programs you're describing, whether it's a younger student trying to develop an interest, or you know, it's wonderful with the more in-depth research stuff that presumably a more advanced student might be ready to handle. Can you talk a little bit more about the mentors that these kids would get a chance to work with? Because that's so important in my view, and the fact that there might be a letter of recommendation coming from the, just curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on the kinds of mentors that you have.
Sure. Well, yeah, typically there'll be PhD students or students that are already fit. Well, yeah, there'll be academics that have their PhD. They may be working in industry already after a time in academia. So for instance, on our engineering course, we have Dr. Akash Trivedi. So he was a lecturer at the University of Oxford for many years. He's now moved into industry, but he's truly passionate about teaching and education. And so we've retained him to help teach our programs. And so these are people that it's not just our mentors. It's not just, oh, this is my summer job to earn a little extra money. It's something they're truly passionate about and love to convey this information and provide guidance for students, and give them confidence, make them let them know that actually I wasn't in any different position than you were 15, 20 years ago, whatever it might be, and give students that belief that I can do this too. I can achieve high things, and I want to now, right? Like I can see where this would lead. That sounds exciting. That sounds like a life that I would like to pursue. In high school, it's hard to see that often. You're not exposed to so many mentors in these areas or subjects. It's hard to kind of have that vision. And so these courses, and this close interaction you'll have with your mentors will help make this vision come alive in students and give you that extra motivation and perhaps drive that you're going to need through the marathon that is high school and college.
What I love about everything you're saying is they're mentors in the full sense of the word, right? Like they're inspiring kids, and they're very invested in them and the subject. But it's so important. I think they're going to hopefully have wonderful mentors at the high school, but it's so great to be exposed to people beyond the high school who are either in industry or in academia at that very high level. I think that's really, really great. And it just seems, having read applications, you get letters of recommendation, and someone goes to a pre-college program, a traditional one where there's 100 kids in the class, but it's a much smaller ratio. The letters of recommendation that your mentors would be able to write, they presumably know the students so much better, right? Because it's a more intimate thing. So I could see that being really helpful. There's a question that just popped in, about how to choose. Should families be choosing academic courses or research internships? Which one have more edge in the application? I'll give my take, but I'd be curious your initial take on that before I give the admissions dean answer kind of thing. But since it's your program, do you want to take that first question?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Well, I say that they offer different things. So the main thing about the academic course is the letter of recommendation. So they can see the students' innate talents. They can see the areas that they might use some improvement and provide that guidance. So it's really the closest one personalized guidance program that we offer really takes place on the summer courses, because we have those one-on-one tutorials as well as the class sizes, and then they have that letter of recommendation, which is very useful because it's coming from outside their school, right? and also from someone who has high level credentials in exactly the field that the students purporting to be interested in. So it's going to hold higher weight than perhaps someone who's more of a generalist in that area. Whereas the research internships, the main boost that provides for an application is in terms of demonstrating that higher level of understanding and readiness for college. So summer courses might be more of learning what they like or deepening their understanding of a field. Research internship is really to push that interest to the next level and really show that I'm capable of higher level study and really show that I'm very interested in this field.
Yeah, I agree. When we're working with students and talking about World Scholars as a possible option for their application, part of the answer that I would give is it does depend somewhat on the student's age. In my perfect world, if I have a student we have a student who's a little bit younger, the summer after 9th grade and 10th grade, I would, with most of those students, they're not quite sure what they're really passionate about. And I just could see the course being so important as a way to test out new interests. And then what we're trying to do, like I talked about earlier, is then over time build this resume that becomes more and more vertical, that you build on things. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like one way a student, as a younger student, takes some of your courses and then finds that passion. And then the research is really the way to take it, as you said, kind of to the next level up, to really dive deeper into that. If I had a student that came to me a little bit older and already knew what they wanted, I'd probably push them straight towards your research. But it kind of depends a little bit on the age. But is that could that be a reasonable path? Someone starts with one of your courses at a younger age, and then as they go through high school, they come back to you and maybe they're ready to try the research later?
Yes, I think that's definitely a viable way to do it. It's also the case that for the courses that we can present things in ways that are more accessible to students than they might get actually in a normal university environment. So kind of deep intuition about how things work that I think is very helpful. So even if they're already older or know what they want to do, the course still can be very useful, more from probably an academic achievement context as opposed to signaling in an application.
Makes sense. So I think the ultimate answer is that they're both going to provide a positive value and add value to an application. And it probably depends a little bit on what the student is trying to gain at that stage of their career, whether, like you said, academic achievement, or depending on where they are they exploring or building? But I would see both of them as aspects that I'd like to see on a resume, right? They're both useful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thanks for that question, our guest who sent that in. And Dr. Dericks, I kind of hijacked that question there. I didn't mean to cut off anything else you were about to say when you finished up your presentation, but again, I appreciate everything you shared with us so far.
Well, yeah, that was a perfect segue. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Kevin, I didn't notice, did we get any other questions that came through that I missed?
I'm not seeing anything else right now, but everybody out there, please feel free to put any questions you have right in the chat. We'll be happy to answer.
I have a question for you, Arthur, if I may.
Yeah, please.
So, with the great depth and breadth of universities that we have in the United States, I wonder if someone with your experience in this field, can you talk about the benefits of receiving guidance on finding a college that is the right fit for you, both in terms of admission success and ultimate professional success after college? And
yeah, want to thank you for that. I think that's really important, especially for students of any age, but particularly younger students who are just starting to figure out high school, and now people are bombarding them with what's going to happen when you move away from home. It can be a tough, overwhelming process. And one of the messages that I try to convey, and I know my counselors feel this way as well, you said it yourself, the depth of amazing universities in this country is really quite staggering. And sure, some of them are much more selective than others, but there are universities with world-class reputations that aren't quite as hard to get into as the Ivies. And I always start with a student's, I hate the word potential because it almost limits somebody. Oh, this is my potential. And then they think that's all they can do, but I'll use that word, or I'll use the word ceiling, like someone's where they can get to in life. Like if they go to a college and excel, a strong university in this country, of which there are hundreds, and excel, their ceiling, forget, there's no ceiling. They can do so many great things because there's so many resources. And so it is important to first ask, what's the environment that's going to let this student excel? And there's a bunch of schools out there that people like to put as bumper stickers on their car. And those are great places to do those things, but that doesn't mean it's the right fit for that student. And one of the things that we enjoy is we often will have students and families come to us because they have a preset list in their mind. And it's often Ivy League schools or whatever, and that's great. But what we take a lot of pleasure in is helping expose those students to a variety of other institutions. And then they get to April of their senior year, and maybe they've been admitted to a couple of those Ivy type schools, but they also got into these other schools and they end up picking one of the other schools. And I'm not against the Ivy Leagues. I'm just saying the point is to keep an open mind and to start by asking, what's the environment that's going to make that student be successful? And that's how we like to build lists, is starting with that environment, but also what are their areas of interest? If a student is a very STEM and engineering and hands-on kind of learner, are all small liberal arts colleges going to be the right fit? Some of them will, but maybe not all of them. Does a student thrive in new environments, constantly meeting new people, or are they coming from an environment where they really feel most confident in speaking up in smaller classes and things like that? There's no right answer to that. People put value judgments on that, but you really have to work with the student to find that out. So, it's always a great achievement when a student gets into a highly selective school, but that doesn't mean that that should be the answer to where they end up attending. And I really enjoy helping students build that more balanced list, which I would suggest starts with kind of environment that helps them be successful and which offers the range of academic interests that they currently possess right now. And then maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but I believe if you can find those two things, it doesn't matter the name on the school, you're more likely to then go excel. If you excel at a university in the US, you've got a lot of great things happening for you.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
We have another question here in the chat. Let's see here.
I think this is probably from Dr. Dericks. Yeah.
Okay. Letter of recommendation is for both academic courses and research internships as well. So I guess they're asking, would both of those opportunities produce letters of recommendation?
No, it's only for our summer courses that we provide letters of recommendation. Because there's a lot more interaction, including the one-on-one tutorials with that are designed for that. So.
And that's good that you're candid about that, because a lot of people are like, oh, give me the letter of recommendation. I want that, but if college admissions people are going to cast it aside if it's generic and they can't speak to the individual intellectual contributions that student has made. So I think that's good that you're not just blanket doing them. You're doing them in the situations where the mentor actually can write that kind of letter, which is good.
That's right. Yeah, we're not going to offer something that's not going to make sense.
Yeah.
So it's.
But if a student did a research project with you and they can show what was produced and the outcome there, maybe they're not getting a letter of recommendation, but we can show that outcome to the admissions in the application to the admissions people.
Exactly. Yeah, it's published online, readily accessible, so that's free for everyone to see.
That's great.
Yeah.
And just as a quick follow-up question, that same guest asked, my son is going into 11th grade. Can he go for research internships in the field of computer science? Yes,
actually, our engineering research internships include computer science research internships. So we have this summer we have cybersecurity as an option for research internship, as well as emergent behavior of AI. So to what extent can AI actually solve problems it has never seen before? And what kind of implications is that going to have for technology going forward. So kind of exciting stuff to see this kind of avant-garde state of these large language models. Really fascinating.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
I'm not seeing anything else right now in the chat.
I got a question. Another question
yeah.
for you,
Sure.
Arthur.
Yeah.
So if students do take up this opportunity to have this free, no obligation, one-on-one tutorial with you,
Yeah.
what kind of things would you go over, and what advice would you provide them on that?
Yeah, so if families do want to take advantage of that, one thing we do ask is that a parent also attend. Once we do work with students, once folks sign up, we're always working one-on-one in the meetings with the students, and then I do separate sessions with the parents when they have questions. But when we do these initial consultations, it's nice to have the whole family together and get all the questions kind of at once. And I like to hear more about the students' backgrounds and interests. So if they can come in prepared to talk about what their current interests are, what their goals at this stage, even if they're vague, what they are. And we like to know what the students' academic records are. And sometimes these meetings we're able to provide just a couple basic pieces of advice that launch a family forward, and we're happy to do that. But what we usually end up doing in these meetings and kind of the intention of them is once that student's passed on their goals to us and we get a little bit of a background onto them, we can talk about how we can help and kind of lay out our curriculum and how we take a team approach. I'm kind of the head counselor that oversees the whole project and the strategy. And then I have a great team of people that one of those awesome team members gets assigned and kind of leads the student through the curriculum, if you will. So we walk through how that, or I would walk through, or Kevin, whoever's doing the meeting, we would walk through how that would actually work. And again, sometimes that's all a family needs. They need a general outline, and we give them a couple pieces and they run with it, and that's great. But we're also using that session to kind of explain how signing up with us, given their particular needs, might be that extra resource that they need to help the student be successful. One of the things that parents tell me a lot is that teenagers have been a great group of people to work with for my whole life, but I think teenagers have been essentially the same for 10 or 20,000 years. They're much more likely to listen to their coach or the teacher they like than always listen right away to what their parents have to say. And what we end up doing is, I think, freeing up the parents to be supportive and make dinner time more fun, because this should be something that's fun and exciting for families. And we can explain in this meeting how we can kind of take the lead to be that person that the student turns to, so that they want to then turn to their parents, as opposed to the parents trying to be both a parent and a coach and a counselor. That's a lot of roles to have to wrap into one person for a teenager anyway.
What can parents do to support their child best in the college application process?
Well, one is to be positive and empowering, because look, this gets said a lot. It is more stressful than ever. Social media doesn't make that easier, the sheer numbers of this. And frankly, a lot of their peers and neighbors have misunderstandings of how this works. So there's a lot of myths, there's a lot of noise out there. So I think the first thing is just being positive that this is going to work out. We want to help you find great places for you, and then really listen to what that student starts to define as what they want. And then, at the risk of sounding self-serving, I think considering finding an expert to then help the family take that next step, because unless you've been living in this world the last 30 years, it's a lot different. And just like you have a coach for your kid in tennis or a piano teacher, they're the ones that hopefully help them get to the next level. And that's what we try to do in conjunction with the parents, is provide the support that everybody needs to be successful. But it all starts with being positive, listening to your kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've had most people stick with us. I appreciate everyone sticking with us tonight. Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about how the recordings will work and all that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. So this is being recorded. We'll send out kind of a follow-up email to everybody that registered via Zoom with a link with access to that recording. And again, just would encourage anybody that has questions, that wants to follow up with either Dr. Smith, with Dr. Dericks, please don't hesitate to do so. Their contact information will also be in that email. Let us know what we can do to help.